What's up, guys? So today we're actually going to be going over another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into a Pokemon that is highly regarded as one of the best Pokemon in the Tempest Cup. And without further ado, I cannot contain it anymore because it's in the title. It's Lapras! So Lapras is actually going to be a water and ice type Pokemon with a max CP of 2641. That is at level 40, 15 IVs across the board. You can actually achieve 15, let me double check that. Pretend you guys didn't see that. You can actually achieve a 1498 at level 22 with a 0 on attack, 10 on defense, and 14 on stamina. Now that exact IV combination does give you the highest stat product available for Lapras under the 1500 mark to get him into the Great League. Now, as far as my numbers go and all of the spreadsheetiness that I have been doing myself, Lapras actually is 9th in bulk when it comes to the bulkiest Pokemon in the Cup. He's actually ranked 8th in stat product, and he actually has an 87.79% stat potential. Now, what does all that mean? So bulk, whenever you take the defense and the stamina of a Pokemon from their base stats and you multiply those together, you actually get this big, large number. It's usually in the tens of thousands if it's a Pokemon that really has some good bulk to it. As far as stat product, we actually do take all three stats when you talk about attack, defense, and stamina. Multiply all three of those together and it gives you a really large number, usually in the millions. Whenever you're talking about numbers that large, that actually gives you a stat product based on all three of their stats, and that kind of lets you take into account things like attack and defense and stamina all at once, and it gives you a really good idea about their bulkiness times their actual attack stat so that you can compare Pokemon in that regard. Then you actually have potential, which is just a maximum potential that you can get divided by the actual potential of the Pokemon in the Great League. Being that Lapras is at 87%, it is great. It is amazing to see that Lapras achieves higher than an 85. I think that is just really good. That means that you get a lot of Lapras to work with and you don't have to worry about, having that fear of, well, I'd have better stats in the Ultra League or maybe even the Master League. Now, let's actually go over moves here. So Lapras, being a Gen 1 Pokemon, has quite a history when it comes to moves here. So we actually have 2 legacy moves. Hang on a second. So we actually have 3 legacy moves that Lapras can obtain if you by chance have a really old Lapras from, let's say, 2016, and you had the chance to learn one of these 3 moves, and luckily you held on to those moves. You actually have a really nice little niche Lapras that a lot of people this month would probably trade you for. So, those legacy moves are actually going to be Ice Shard, Ice Beam, and Dragon Breath. They're all marked with a red star there. Let's actually look at our fast moves first here. We actually have Frost Breath, Water Gun, and Ice Shard. Frost Breath is going to do 2.5 energy per turn at a 3.5 damage per turn. Water Gun gaining 3 energy per turn for a 3 damage per turn. Ice Shard here with actually the highest energy at 3.33 with a damage of 3 per turn as well. So, out of those 3 moves, Ice Shard definitely does gain the most energy. It's very quick, but it's legacy, and that's kind of the big issue. Now, I did run several different numbers based on legacy and non-legacy Lapras, and I'll kind of go over those here in just a second, a little bit more in depth. If you had to choose a fast move, if you have the Ice Shard, I like it. Otherwise, Water Gun, by far way better than Frost Breath because of that extra half an energy that you're going to gain per turn is just so much better for your ultimate goal with Lapras. As far as charge moves go, we actually have Blizzard, Hydro Pump, Surf, Ice Beam, and Dragon Breath. So Dragon Breath is the only move that doesn't get any kind of stab damage from Lapras. Being that it's actually legacy, being that it's not stab, being that it's a dragon move, it's just not really used a lot in this meta this month. Honestly, I don't even think it's worth even talking about, so we won't even do it. Ice Beam here is the outlier. Of course, it is a legacy move, costing 60 energy, doing 90 damage, It is a good move by all means, and I think it's probably more desirable to have Ice Beam than it is to have Ice Shard for me personally. I like the Lapras setup where you have Water Gun and Ice Beam. I think it's just a really, really powerful Pokemon with those two moves. Next, you actually have Blizzard with 75 energy to fire, 130 damage every time you do for a damage per energy ratio of 1.73. We actually have Hydro Pump for the same energy cost of 75, the same damage of 130, and the same ratio at 1.73. We have Surf for 40 energy cost, 65 damage at a 1.63 damage per energy. And lastly, we do round off with Ice Beam there. Whenever we get into choosing which moves you want to have on Lapras, it gets really, really picky because there's a lot of legacy moves that Lapras has access to that ends up setting him apart from other Laprases. But I ran some numbers up against pvpoke.com, just all of the Tempest Cup Pokemon, all 160 Pokemon that are allowed in the Cup, and basically just said, let's see what we win mostly with, let's see what we lose mostly with. So, if you were to take Ice Shard, Surf, and Ice Beam, you would actually win 71.4% of your matches. You would actually either tie or lose the other percentage of the time, but 71.4% is crazy. That's a huge percentage. That means that I can basically bet that 7 out of 10 times I'm going to win the matchup. Whoa, that's huge. So if we actually switch off of Ice Beam and we go with Blizzard instead, you can actually do Ice Shard, Blizzard, and Surf and win the same number of matches. You would win 71.4% of the time. So what does that mean? That really means that Surf is just highly preferred in this meta. Unless the Pokemon is just going to be taking super effective damage from Ice types, then Surf is just highly preferred here. Because you can spam Surf so much, you're just going to be able to push out crazy amounts of damage, and you're going to be able to take down Pokemon. The difference between Ice Beam and Blizzard in practice is probably a lot larger of a difference, but on paper, Ice Beam and Blizzard are pretty interchangeable inside this meta. Now, let's actually switch off of Ice Shard and go with Water Gun here. So if we have Water Gun, if we did Water Gun, Blizzard, and Surf, we would actually win 72.3% of the time. We actually just got better. So I think that the real reason for this is because of all of the freaking ground type Pokemon that are available in the meta. And Water Gun is just, it's a good move by itself, but it's going to do more damage to things in the meta than Ice will. Because Ice is actually going to resist itself, whenever you put Ice moves up against a Ice Pokemon, it just doesn't do as much damage. You can at least get Water Gun to do neutral damage to a lot more Pokemon than you can Ice Shard. So therefore, Water Gun actually secures a few more percent worth of matches for you. Now, even better, let's put some more percentage on this thing. If you were to take Water Gun with Surf and Ice Beam, this is where it really starts to differentiate here. Because you don't have an Ice fast move, having a quicker Ice charge move makes it so much better. If you had Water Gun, Surf, and Ice Beam, you would actually win 74.8% of your matches. That's crazy. That's almost a 3/4 of a chance that you would win the matchup. Whew, that's huge. That's so much. That's so many matches that you can just say, well, yeah, I have a better chance of winning if I throw my Lapras out first. That's just straight up insane. Lapras is nothing to sleep on. You need to have good Lapras counters. You do. Now, let's actually get into a little bit of the positives and negatives of Lapras here, and then we'll bring it all back with a look at the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon matchups against Lapras itself here. So let's start with the negatives. The biggest thing that I think holds Lapras back in some situations is access to these legacy moves. Having Ice Beam, like I said, Ice Beam is definitely my preferred build on it. I would definitely go with Water Gun, Surf, and Ice Beam. but having a Lapras that has Ice Beam is going to be really hard to obtain. Not only are you going to have to find someone with a Legacy Lapras, but then on top of that, you're going to hope that they have Ice Beam, not Dragon Breath, or whatever the move pool was back in the day as well. So, that's going to be an issue. The other negative thing is to get both Ice Beam and Surf, it is going to cost you 75,000 Stardust. So that's quite a hefty investment, but for a Pokemon as good as Lapras, I think it's actually pretty warranted here. Because I can't really foresee, I think maybe Ice Shard and Surf would do okay if you were trying to like budget it out. Water Gun and Ice Beam would probably do really, really well by itself, but you really forfeit part of the toolbox that Lapras brings whenever you get rid of a second move. Water Gun and Surf are just going to be able to push and push and push damage, and you're going to be able to spam charge moves. Ice Beam is going to be able to really help you get to that ice charge move so much faster, and you're going to be able to push that super effective damage to Pokemon that take it. So it is a hefty investment, but I definitely think that it's warranted here because Lapras is such a dominating Pokemon that people are going to have to work around it or they're going to lose to it. End of story. Next, let's actually look at some positive things here. So positive, my first positive thing is I have that Lapras is just insanely bulky. The fact that Lapras is so bulky makes him so good in this meta. He's able to take tons and tons of damage and just walk all over you right back. And kind of hand in hand here, another positive thing that I have is that it quad resists ice. So the fact that you actually can quad resist ice, and being that ice is one of the dominating types in this cup, it means that you're basically quad resisting one of the hardest moves that you're going to go up against. Having a quad resistant to ice is just so good. Water Gun is the other thing that I think that really can set Lapras apart, because with Water Gun, if your opponent doesn't have Water Gun on their own Lapras, then you could end up beating their Lapras because they would be quad resisted with their Ice Shard or Frost Breath, and it kind of really puts you in a favorable position. Next on the positives is I think Lapras is probably the best lead in this game, being that you can win over 70% of your matchups with all of the combinations of moves that we talked about today. That's insane. That's 7 out of 10 times that you're going to be able to win when you lead with Lapras. Now, something that you should really try to understand is that people are going to try to fake you out, and you should try to fake them out as well. Having Lapras on your team does end up making them think really hard. Do I really need to put out a Razor Leaf user here? Because Abomasnow is probably the biggest issue for Lapras. He's just really, really good. Abomasnow is going to resist a lot of water and a lot of ice damage, so it's going to be a really tough hill to climb whenever you go up against an Abomasnow with a Lapras here. So, kind of keep that in mind whenever you're picking teams actually in your tournament. What do I need to throw my Lapras up against? Because if they have several Razor Leaf users, it probably isn't going to be a great lead. Now let's actually talk about matchups. So, no spoilers here. Lapras winning 70% of the entire Cup matchups. The top 10 bulkiest Pokemon, this one was kind of a landslide. So the only matchup that we really do lose to in the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon is Tropius. We actually trump Steelix, Lugia, Jumpluff, Dugong, Altaria, Claydol, and Regice. Now, all of these matchups that I did were with the Water Gun, Ice Beam, and Surf moveset, so that is the best possible moveset in terms of percentages, and that is going to win you the most bulkiest matchups there. There was a moveset, I can't remember exactly which one, but Jumpluff ends up tying with Lapras in certain movesets, but for the best possible moveset to win the most matches, you actually win so many of the matches itself. Lapras is just such an exciting Pokemon to really think about, and to think that he's got so much versatility in his toolbox. He's got so much usage that you can get out of him. I definitely think it is a must-have. If you have a Lapras, power it up at least to as close to 1500 as you can afford and as you can get, and really start to practice with it, because depending on if you can have 2 charge moves or if you can only have 1, it's got its places. It's really got a good hold on the meta, and I think it's a must-have for any team. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching these deep dives. I really do appreciate it. If you guys have any Pokemon that you want to see in a deep dive, please let me know down in the comments below. I say it almost every video, but I just want to make sure that you guys know these are recorded in advance. I don't get to the Pokemon that you comment immediately the day after. It'll take me a few days, but I will get to the Pokemon. I have high requests for Claydol, Magneton, and a ton more. I can't think of them off the top of my head. Those 2 are the ones that come to mind. But please keep letting me know what you guys want to see. I will be happy to look into those Pokemon for you. And thank you so much. If you like to like videos, make sure you do that. If you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below about our boy Lapras today. And until our next video, I will catch you then.